Hello, everybody, and welcome to class. Thank you so much for being here. How have you been? Awesome. Okay. Awesome. Thumbs up. Yeah, you could be in different places. I've been an undergrad before. I know the feeling. I know what this is like. So this is week number 11 out of 15 weeks of instruction. Week 16 is finals week. So we are ramping towards the end of our class. Imagine on day one, felt like, oh, it's going to be forever away until we're done with the course. And now we're in week 11. So hang in there, and thank you for surviving up to this point. School is fun, can be challenging. So you hang in there, right? And you will graduate. It's going to be good. So just keep at it and let me know how I can support you. Is there a reason why you guys are not at soccer? That's a teasing question. A lot of folks are at soccer today, so I wish our soccer team the very, very best. They play today at 2:30, is that correct? I think so, yeah. So we wish them well, and I need to support our teams more. So I want to do that, and I need to figure out how to do that. So do any of you play anything? No? Okay. Okay. Awesome, awesome. Today the plan is to walk you through the first part of part 2 of our SEGO text. And so that's the plan. And then we'll do the last part, the last part of part 2 on Thursday. So simple agenda, and that's my plan. If you don't have a hard copy of the book, I encourage you to get it. It's a good read. It's a wonderful resource, and I believe it will remain relevant for a long time to come, because Dan Siegel is just such an accomplished scientist around child and youth development. In terms of where we are, this is spring scheduling. So any of my advisees, let's talk over email, look at your stuff in my WP class, because all of my students, I put everything in there all the way through graduation. Make sure there are no conflicts for spring. If you think you have capacity to take more credits, I know a student with 13 credits. I want to see if that student can ratchet it up to 16. If you think you can take 18 credits with what you have, go for it, but don't overload yourself. You are looking for conflicts on your schedule. You are looking to make sure you have no blanks. You know how to work my WP, right? So we want to make sure that all of those courses that you need for your major, there's something for everything, so that there are no blanks and we can see everything. So work with your advisor if it's not me. I prefer email. We can knock it out on email. If we need to visit, I will happily do that with you. If you have space in your schedule, I want to talk to you about the emotional first aid workshop. Some of you have already taken it. Congratulations. The emotional first aid workshop is a one-day workshop, Sci 340. It is an upper division psychology credit. It's a one-day workshop that's done. It will be done this year on February 19th. It's a Saturday. And the workshop will run from 8:30 to 4 p.m. in Maguire. And you get a certificate for completing the workshop. So if it's not on your schedule, this is something that will not only be an upper division psychology credit, but you get a certificate. So it's a certification, and it becomes a resume entry. So if you want to have an entry for 2022 in graduate school, they said to us, you need to have an entry every year, at least 2. So I have an entry as of last week. I attended the NCFR conference. So that's a resume entry for 2021. For 2022, consider this if you are not there yet. Right. Where are we? that's where we are. On Thursday, you have your project draft due. We were talking about it a few minutes ago with folks in the class. Your major presentation is it's in your syllabus, clearly articulated. And what I'm looking for in this draft is as much as you can give me. The more you have in there, the more feedback I give you. This is my way of fail-safing your performance here. And also helping you to enrich this project so that it's a good product that you'll be proud of. Some of you want to go to graduate school. They will ask you for examples of your work. So in all of my classes, I'm thinking about that. That's why I want these things as electronic products, because I want you to take them with you. And when they say to you, samples of your work, these are some of the things you could whip out, and in addition to some of your best essays, and present to graduate school committees. Certain jobs might say, what else can you show us around your understanding of adolescent development? So you want to say, hey, I've done these cool projects. I know in this organization you do A, B, and C. And I'm one of those folks. I can develop some cool projects. We did a project in school. I can already see how I can spin the project and do some workshops for our adolescents in the space, or for families with adolescent children, et cetera, et cetera. So for me, when I design the project, it's a function of you want to use it as a springboard to do other things. So that's what I imagine when I put this stuff together. Okay, so let me know if you have any questions around this project draft. Some folks said to me, hey, we wrote a paper. Can we give you that in lieu of, of the project draft? I'll take it. You just won't get any advice on styling. I've seen certain presentations and the colors just don't work, like yuck when I open a presentation. Oh, wow, the person who did this has a great sense of color. The group has a great sense of color, whatever. A paper, but I'm more interested in the content of it. So a paper will do just that. You will not lose any points for giving me a paper. That's fine. What I'm trying to understand is how you are framing the issue and where you're going. I want to see how you're utilizing the additional research. I want to see how you are incorporating, at the very least, work. But if you are advanced enough that you are already pulling from this wonderful resource, that would be great. But you have requirements around how many resources you should be having in your project. So I'm looking to see how well you are sewing all of that together. Yeah. The next paper is coming up on the 19th. I'm going to work as fast as I can to give you feedback. I know in this class I need to catch up on grading. I will do that as soon as possible. So you will have, I will be up to date. And I look forward to this paper, and that is due on the 19th. Everything you need for this class is on the syllabus. I give you directions. So everything I put, all of this is copy and paste from the syllabus. Even this is copy and paste. So that syllabus is our contract, you and I. And I am blessed that our train continues to run on time. So grateful for that, and I hope that that will continue. So if you are wondering about something, your syllabus should have everything you need, absolutely everything you need, including examples of what an APA style reference section should look like. I still have upper division students who don't have a reference section that is correct in APA style. That is deeply troubling, because if you are taking upper division classes, we expect that you know how to present work that is correct in APA style. And with the age of the internet, even my kids know how to Google it, Dad. They ask me questions I don't know the answers to. And I'm trying to teach them that, hey, you have to use books, and Google is a good tool. It's a good starting point, but not everything on Google is peer reviewed, Peer-reviewed means it's a journal article. A journal article, before they publish it, you send your journal article to a journal and say, hey, I want to publish on preventing child work. And so what they do is they find reviewers who know that area well and say, critique this puppy right here. So they look at it and then they say, how did you come up with this number? We give us information of where you collected your data. You say this here, give us more evidence. This makes no sense. Why are you doing this? And they tear it apart and they give it back to the editor. Editor says, rejected it first review. Or if you can do this, bring back a revised draft. That's peer review. So it's not junk. It's not lies. It's based on the scientific method we talked about in chapter 1 of Burke. We went through chapter 1 in this class. You get the flow. So I look forward to reading your papers and it's going to be awesome. Are there any questions about where we are, where we are going? I take my time to, it's what, almost 15 minutes talking at where we are and where we are going to try and minimize any confusion, help folks be on the same page, to minimize challenges. So feel free to let me know if anything comes up or if you have any questions, okay? All right. You know me, I'm a leaf peeper. That's one of my favorite spots. And did I tell you, I think I missed leaf peeping season. So when I went to this spot this year, a lot of the leaves had fallen off. I missed it. That's when I was away, I think. So you will see some pictures of leaf peeping this year. That is not my picture, but it's very nice. So I will let you know if a picture does not belong to me, because I don't want to plagiarize someone's pictures, right? Okay, if you have your book, let's read together. Starting from page 65, you want to read a few pages and talk about brain maturation. So this section is part 2. That's what we are transitioning to now. And it's talking about the teenage brain. And so I can read the first paragraph and someone can pick it up in the next paragraph, and let's keep the train going. We want to read up to, let's read page 65 and 66. I will start. A 17-year-old senior in high school, Katie, looked terrified as her stomach was being pumped in the local hospital emergency room after a night of heavy drinking. She was writhing in pain from the emetic-induced vomiting and still drunk from the 7 shots of tequila and 4 glasses of wine she had consumed at an end of summer gathering that evening. At least that was her parents' version of what had occurred, based on what Katie's friends had told them. For her part, Katie couldn't remember much of what had occurred that evening. Someone can continue.
As it turns out, Katie brought the hard liquor to the party, shared it with her classmates, and even coaxed the host of the event, the daughter of the director of the school, into the drinking spree. Katie was expelled from school the following week, which was the week she came in for her first therapy session. In speaking more with her about what happened, I learned that she had planned to have fun at the party, even though it was at the home of the director of her school.
Thanks. Someone else?
Katie knew how off it all sounded. What were you thinking before that party? I asked her. She looked sheepish, glancing away with the beginning of a smile. What did you think might happen after? School rules state that there's 0 tolerance for alcohol at school-related functions. Katie looked at me, her eyes wide and open, perhaps smiling widely suggested that perhaps her anxiety was increasing, or that she was sounding more uneasy.
Well, she began, a smile now wide across her face. I did think about it. She paused and looked around the room as if someone might be listening, and then she turned back to me. I knew what might happen, I guess, but the fun of getting completely smashed at the director's own house just seemed like too much fun to turn down. Her eyes shone with a sparkle of delight. The fact that Katie herself admitted that she had planned what would happen at the party, even in the face of knowledge about the potential outcomes, resonates in recent studies revealing that teenagers usually have awareness of the risks of potentially dangerous behaviors. As teens, we are often not oblivious to the negative consequences of our actions. Instead, even though the negative consequences, the cons, are fully known, we place more emphasis on the potential positive aspects, the pros of an experience, the thrill, the shared experience, the fun, and the excitement of breaking the rules. That emphasis on the positive, we know now, is a result of shifts in the brain structure and function during the adolescent period. Okay, why don't we stop there for a little bit as we use that to help understand and lay the foundation for brain maturation as we walk through part 2 of this book. There were 5 of them, and I was trying to capture them in the shot, and they were moving along. So I was trying to take a picture. I have a few more pictures of them later on. So brain maturation. Let's go back to what we talked about in chapter 2 of book in the child development class, HD311. We talked about this as well in the general psychology class. Those of you who took general psych with me, Psych 140, we talked about it in chapter 5 of the Myers text, if you remember. We talked about adolescence and the onset of puberty. And during sexual maturation, because of the changing structure of the brain and the hormones that are now being released, you have what are called primary sexual characteristics. So this is not in your text. It's a mix and match in this presentation of different spots, including Psych 140, including stuff that we covered in HD 311. So primary sexual characteristics is the maturation of reproductive organs. So what demarcates the onset of puberty is now the ability to reproduce and have children. So this period of puberty is marked by 2 important events. Well, one important event different in girls, where there is now the onset of menarche, or the onset of menstruation, or a girl's period, right? And in boys, it is marked by spermarchy, and that is their first ejaculation. So that's primary sexual characteristics as a result of sexual maturation. There's a lot that's going on in the brain, and so we are laying this foundation as we build the case for what is happening to the teenager brain, so that we can understand what happened to Katie and why she was fascinated by engaging in that risky behavior that could have led to her death. And she's finding that amusing, fascinating. You have secondary sexual characteristics, other visible changes signaling sexual maturity. In girls, it is the development of their breasts. I just remember my kids not knowing how to say boobs, and they would say googs. Mommy's googs. Boys, the onset of or the growth of facial hair, and the voice change. The voice breaks, becomes coarse. Mufaro, my son, is terrified of, I don't know how it came up. They were having a conversation, and Matilda says, "Oh, your voice is gonna get deep." And he was frightened. He's like, "What's gonna happen to my voice? How is that gonna happen?" And they were like, "I don't know." They were just having a conversation about how his voice is going to change. He's like, "Oh, well, how is that gonna happen? And why?" He didn't know. Both have underarm and pubic hair. So all of these are secondary sexual characteristics. So if you remember the conversations we had in our general psychology class, those of you who took it with me, we try and talk about the difference between the two. And it's a function of one has something to do with reproduction, the other doesn't. So that's how I emphasize that to students. I don't know if any of you are comfortable talking about any of your experiences here, but I will never forget the fascination. I went to an all boys only high school. In Zimbabwe, we have boys only schools segregated by gender. And so growing a mustache was so fascinating. For one reason, for a long time, it was really, really one reason. Being able to get girls because you look older and being able to go to certain movies. If you had a mustache, you looked a little older than you probably know that you were, right? So the fascination of facial hair, because you would look older. So it's a fun time. It's an exciting time. And in the general psych class, I can see it in my mind, we talked about the pros of early sexual maturation, pros and cons of early, on time, and then late maturation. We spend our time here, we spend our time here. Here is particularly challenging and problematic for females if they are early maturers. Late was also problematic, not so much. We spend a lot of time talking about what that does and the pros and cons of that, right? As you can imagine, early maturers are at higher risk for early onset of sexual behavior, and that has its own problems and challenges. A lot of cons around early maturation for girls. Get advances from older men, from older boys. We worry about teen pregnancy. We worry about STIs. We worry about HIV. All of those are cons of maturing early. Late is most associated with what? For girls. Late maturation, late onset of menstruation or menarche. What are some cons of late maturation? Starting your period later than average. No, not necessarily, no. If a girl matures later than her cohort, than her peers. Yeah.
Like in middle school, look a certain way or didn't start. Or copies.
Yeah. The bullying. And what does bullying lead to? Bullying, depression. Yeah. So mental health plummets. So we worry about that with this population. Self-esteem can tank, leading to anxiety and internalizing problems, right? For boys, early maturation can lead to early onset of sexual activity and behavior. It can lead to early onset of drug use, wanting to hang out with people who are cool. Sometimes those folks are not positive role models, and you try and fit in by engaging in risky behavior. Later, one positive con, it's not all bad, one positive pro of early onset of spermachy is prowess in sports. So that's one thing. Another pro of early spermachy is confidence can be really high. Self-esteem can be high, and that comes with all kinds of positive outcomes. So pros and cons, we talk about that in chapter 2 of Burke, building on all the stuff we learn in the general psychology class. So this is, you know, we are building a case to understand what's happening with Katie, and Sigo does a good job of that. And so that's what we are working towards, to understand this maturation and what is happening to young people and why they might engage in risky behaviors. Okay, little more background information as we unpack the adolescent brain. During this time, as they transition to adulthood, we see an expansion of synaptic connections supporting gains in executive function, reasoning, problem solving, and decision making. So it's not yet fully complete, this development, but it's developing at this time, right? This is coming from chapter 11. So we covered that in this class. I'm pulling it back. And when I say to you, I need to see you making connections between Siegel and Burke, this is one way I'm making that connection between the two texts, okay? I'm looking for that in any of our work that's remaining in this class. Feel free to make connections between the two texts. If you do that, you are on your way to scoring the highest grade. So in chapter 12, Burke also talked about cognitive control network is still developing. So Katie is engaging in this risky behavior because this network is not yet fully, completely developed. So her inhibition, her planning, and her delay of gratification are not yet fully mature. Hence, she did this, engaged in this risky behavior and put her life at risk. There are changes in emotional, social network outpaced development of the cognitive control network, resulting in self-regulation difficulties. A lot of words there. They're not mine, they're from your text. But basically what we are saying is there are self-regulation difficulties. Focus on that last part. And so that cognitive control network is still not yet fully in place. And so we see self-regulation difficulties that Katie clearly has. Stronger response to excitatory neurotransmitters. We are going to unpack all this in the next couple of slides. Increased reactivity to stress and to pleasurable and social stimuli. So all of that becomes super exciting, all these things. Pleasure, social stimuli. We see unchecked drive for novelty, leading to sensation seeking because of a growing and developing cognitive control network that is not yet fully developed. Any questions? Not yet. So let's talk. So we said here, stronger response to excitatory neurotransmitters. So what are neurotransmitters? This is coming from your general psychology text. In this objective, in this class, I seek to help the students process that objective there, describing how neurotransmitters influence behavior and explain how drugs and other chemicals affect neurotransmission. So a neurotransmitter is a chemical in the brain that alters activity in neurons. Particular neurotransmitters influence specific behaviors and emotions. I didn't want to overload this slide or to add too many slides, but if you remember that site that shows how neurons communicate with each other, it's the part where one neurotransmitter moves from one neuron to the next is called a receptor site. These are areas on the surface of neurons and other cells that are sensitive to neurotransmitters. Our knowledge of these chemicals is incomplete. We don't know everything about them. Suspected effects of 6 of them are displayed in the next slide, which we will look at in a second. So in the next slide, we'll look at some of these neurotransmitters and what they do in the body. We want to understand Katie's behavior and understand the role that neurotransmitters played in explaining her behavior. So these neurotransmitters, these chemicals, they have the ability to influence us in different ways. So your book on the very next page, on page 67, it says dopamine, decisions, and the drive for reward. What is dopamine? We will unpack what dopamine is. It's a neurotransmitter that makes us feel rewarded. So you might have a dopamine rush when you are in the casino gambling. So let's unpack neurotransmitters and their role in the body in the next couple of slides. It's one of my favorite spots. And this is a picture from this past Sunday. Maryhurst University. I have a couple of pictures from that spot. They have the most beautiful campus, had the most beautiful campuses. That university closed in 2019, 2020. Very sad. So they are turning the campus into a a retirement home. What do you call that? A retirement home? What do you call it? Retirement community? Okay. Like the one down the road here, what do you call that? Retirement community? It's a nursing home for retired people, right? Yes. Okay, but it's called a nursing home. What's the difference between a nursing home and a retirement home? Okay. They're older, but they don't have one. Okay. What? Elderly living. Yeah. Okay. Now on this campus, they have they have two sections. They have the independent living, so they have both. What do you call that? Retirement home. Okay. Okay, I will look next time and see. I spend a lot of time in this area. Ah, but she lives in a house with a family, so that's a home. Yeah. Okay. This is a campus, entire campus. So the elderly folks just walk around this facility, you know, and in the summer you see people in the community coming to do yoga, walking dogs. It's the most serene place. I love to come here to just relax and for me, take pictures of these beautiful trees. Okay, neurotransmitters. We were talking about those. Let's go back to neurotransmitters. So we said we know information about 6 of them or so. We know in detail information about 75 chemical substances that can transmit messages between neurons. So there's one called ACH that you are seeing in this figure, in this table. Its function is to enable muscle action, learning, and memory. When it malfunctions, it is associated with Alzheimer's disease. Right, in our text, in our class, we are focused and we are interested in dopamine. Dopamine influences movement, learning, attention, and emotion. An oversupply is linked to schizophrenia. Undersupply is linked to tremors and decreased mobility in Parkinson's disease. So there's 73 more that we could talk about at length, but that's not the focus of what we're doing. I'm just helping to set it up so that you can understand the information better. Are there any questions at this time? Okay, let's keep going. Parkinson's disease. So the reason why I have that slide is an undersupply of dopamine, the neurotransmitter that is associated with rewarding behavior. An undersupply is associated with decreased mobility and Parkinson's disease. Individual with Parkinson's disease has trouble executing voluntary movements and has tremors, rigidity, and a depressed mood. The condition has been linked to a gradual decay in the system of axons that releases the neurotransmitter dopamine. In the general psychology class, I have a picture of, what's the name of that famous actor who suffers from Parkinson's disease? Jamie Foxx. He has become a very big advocate for research in Parkinson's disease. We are more focused on the role of dopamine in the behavior of adolescents, the reward that they get from this chemical. Okay, so let's bring it home now. What is dopamine? Chemical that is linked to action that is pleasurable, and this redistribution can raise the threshold of stimulus that is needed to feel pleasure. This explains why teens may seek new excitement through increasingly risky behaviors. Changes in dopamine combined with other chemical and physical changes help explain the challenges that adolescents often have in controlling impulses. Your book in page 67 starts talking about impulsivity. We are going to impulsivity after this slide. So changes in dopamine helps us to understand why adolescents such as Katie might have difficulty controlling impulses, maintaining successful social relationships, and engaging in long-term planning that Katie clearly didn't have when she went on this drinking spree at her director's house. That is not my picture. Neither is that one. So on page 67, it talks about impulsivity. And the reason why it's going there is because Siegel is talking about the brain's increased drive for reward and how it manifests in 3 ways. So the one way is through impulsive behaviors. What is impulsivity? Behavior that occurs without thoughtful reflection. Action without any pause. So those are direct quotes from page 67 in your text. Are there any questions about neurotransmitters, dopamine, and impulsivity? Why don't you tell yourself, or if you're comfortable connecting with another human being to break the monotony, try and summarize some of the things we've talked about to yourself or to a neighbor preferably, so that you can remember this information. Or any questions that are coming up for you, or any thoughts that are arising. To give you time to process the information, you know. Don't want to gloss over it too quickly. So it's my sincere hope that folks are doing the reading, so that when we come into class, this becomes a second time for us to then process the information, you know. And it will help with retention and enjoying our time together. Let's go back to Burke, chapter 11, figure 11.3, talks about the development of impulsivity and sensation seeking from ages 12 to 24. Again, you see how I'm making connections between what we processed in Burke and what we are now reading in Siegel. Please, if you want to score highly in the remaining assignments, I need to see those connections, okay? So a lot of what we have processed together in Burke is now showing up in Dan Siegel's work. So this information here is talking about sensation seeking, how it peaks from 12 to about age 16. It goes up. You see the red line on the graph. And then it slowly starts to slow down. This figure is coming out of a research in a longitudinal study of a large representative sample of 7,600 US youth, impulsivity declined steadily, while sensation seeking increased in early adolescence and then diminished more gradually. Findings confirm the challenge that the emotional and social network poses to cognitive control. So this is research done by Harden and Tucker-Drob, 2011. Their study is called Individual Differences in the Development of Sensation Seeking and Impulsivity During Adolescence. A peer-reviewed source. I hate it when I see in your reference section and I see this. Wow, it drives me nuts. Especially if I then don't see, Siegel. Oh, it drives me nuts. You know what ND means, right? No date, cannot be verified, could be crap. Pardon my French. You understand? I won't go crazy if you have a couple of these, but you have this and you have a couple peer-reviewed stuff that's coming from journal articles. It's okay to start here. There's nothing wrong with that. But try and find where oftentimes they are citing it from somewhere and they're too lazy or don't know APA stuff. You're paying a lot of money to tell the world that you know APA. So you gotta use it. So this person at many occasions, just don't know how to do this. So you can start from here and then try and Google where they got it from. They got it from somewhere and go find it. Tree time. One of my favorite trees from last year. I missed it this year. I missed it. And that is my picture. Love it. Okay, so Siegel on page 60 something talks about hyper rationality. The teen brain minimizes the chance of risk and maximizes the focus on the positive outcomes. And in this book, Siegel uses a very frightening example. Russian roulette. What is Russian roulette? What's your understanding of Russian roulette? Say it out, Teresa. Yeah. So Russian roulette is this very risky game where they take a revolver, load it with a round, spin the chamber, and then point the gun at their head, and then press the trigger and pass the gun around. What are the consequences of this kind of hyper rationality? Yeah, you could die. So bad things can happen.
I don't know, is that a weird question to ask?
No, I understand completely where you're coming from. I wouldn't know how to answer that question in terms of the legalities, but the person who owns the gun is in serious trouble. You know?
That's what I mean. It's like if you're in that big circle and you're 17 years old, it's like, is it like accomplice to murder? Like everyone agreed to fight.
I don't know about everyone else, but the owner of the gun is in trouble.
Yeah.
I don't know about everyone else.
That's
yep. Exactly. But you see how different is Russian roulette to what Katie did? Probably not as serious, but she could have died. Yeah. So it's a kind of Russian roulette. But how many times do teens do these very, very risky behaviors that could lead to death. Yeah. Yeah. You what?
And I was driving him home from the store. Speeding is so fun. He just brought that up out of nowhere. So I was like, it's not that speeding that's fun. It's the chemical that is releasing that is fun. And then, and we'll tell about how like when we went go racing, that was fun, but that was a safe way of doing it. And he said, yeah, but you know, go racing is fun, and that you don't live from go racing. When you're speeding out in the street, like that, like, you don't know if you're surprised.
So now you are, what a wonderful example of speeding. In my general psychology class in chapter 5, when we talk about testosterone, I played this video. You remember the video I showed you of the race? You remember that video? Okay. You think we can show it at the end of class? Okay, and I think it will help you, and you might show this to your class, I don't know, but to help put a face to that concept. The reason why it's fun is because of dopamine. So now you can tell them it's a dopamine rush. And so Siegel in this text is talking about how to channel that energy in safe and productive ways. So I have 11 more slides. Some of them are pictures, but I'm almost done. And we'll hear what Siegel said around how to channel that energy and that dopamine in safe ways. That's a lot of what Siegel is trying to get at in the book. So what a beautiful example, and thank you for bringing that to our attention. A little extra information again, talking at what's happening in the teenager brain. And let's talk about neurological development. This is not in your text, this is extra information. The next couple of slides are all extra information. Different parts of the brain grow at different times. We said that control network is not yet fully developed. It's because different parts of the brain grow at different rates, right? So the limbic system matures first. The limbic system is what is associated with fear, emotional impulses. That matures first. And why? For survival. If you see something frightening, your body can respond to a frightening stimulus. Followed by the prefrontal cortex, which is the front part of your head and your brain that is responsible for that control network. Planning ahead, emotional regulation, that part matures last. And so instinctual and emotional areas develop before the reflective ones do. And that's why people, why adolescents do risky things, dumb stuff, dangerous stuff. Here's more information to help us understand brain maturation that Siegel is getting at on page 74. So the nucleus ambiens, I have a figure that will show you where all these parts sit. This is the pleasure center of the brain, active during pleasurable activities such as racing down the highway in a nice sports car. Nucleus ambiens is highly active during feeding for babies. They are fascinated by feeding. That's the part that is responsible for overseeing sex. Drug use plays a major role in addiction. So it can be likened to a green light, because if you think about it from a Freudian perspective, you gotta throw in theory in there, right? If you think about it from a Freudian perspective, id, ego, superego, the id are your basic biological drives: food and eating, sex, gambling, etc., right? Oftentimes the body wants to do this without restriction. So it's like this green light and wants to go and satisfy those pleasurable activities. So it's like a green light. The prefrontal cortex matures late in adolescence or in early adulthood. Well, you know the age, we've talked about this many times. When does the prefrontal cortex fully mature? When is the brain fully developed? You know the answer. What number is coming from?
I want to say it's in the 20s, but I feel like that's wrong.
It's what?
It's like in the 20s.
Yeah, 25
Yeah.
plus minus 2 years. For girls, it's about minus 2 years, 25 minus 2 years or so. For boys, plus 2 years or so, about 25. So the prefrontal cortex is the red light. That's the red light to, hey, I want to eat, but I can't eat now. Or I'm starving. My son would say, I can eat a horse right now. I was like, whoa, bro, you got to leave the horse by itself, okay? Leave the horse alone. And surely you're not that hungry. I'm starving. No, you're not. You're very hungry, and there's a difference, you know? So imagine a time when you were famished. You thought you could just inhale the food, right? But your red light, your prefrontal cortex is what slows you down. That's the red light that says, okay, decorum, behavior, eat slowly, chew it slowly and swallow it, right? You understand? I hope that example is helpful for you. So that part matures late. So this graph is showing us how the brain matures back to front. So the back parts are responsible for survival. That's all the parts that are in black. Those ones mature first. The way the brain development generally happens is from back to front, which is somewhat of an oversimplification. This development track makes sense when you think about the functions of areas such as the brainstem, cerebellum, which keep us alive and help us function in the world on a very basic level. Cerebellum developing more rapidly early on, and the frontal lobe reaching full maturity last. Brainstem is responsible for basic life functions such as breathing, heartbeat, and blood pressure. Cerebellum, regulation and coordination of movement, posture, and balance, as well as sensory processing. We were just talking about the nucleus accumbens, pleasure center of the brain, which is where we are reminded what makes us feel good and reminds us to go after those things regardless of the cost. And that's what Katie did. She didn't process and think about the cost of her behavior. And that's a part that we are concerned about a lot in adolescence. Limbic system, the amygdala is the system that is responsible for our emotional memory, our response to fear, fight or flight, and our pleasure response. Areas in green are all very important areas that develop later, starting in adolescence. They are also directly impacted by the substance use and play a role in the potential development of a substance use disorder. I hope that is helpful for you. That is my picture. Again, on the Maryhurst campus. I don't know, but they have the most beautiful trees for me. That is not my picture. That is the Japanese garden. And I have never been to the Japanese garden. First time I ever went there, I was poor. I didn't have any money on me. And it was 20 bucks a pop, and the four of us were in the car. So I was like, okay, now go do something else now. Roses are red and they're free, and they're just a few meters away from here. So we did that. I will never forget that day. Brain integration on page 77. So Siegel talks about integrative growth and how that leads to GIST. I say gift there, but it's GIST, G-I-S-T, GIST thinking. And what does he say about it? Channeling the energy through helpful and safe ways. That's what we were talking, that's what we were alluding to, Myra. How to channel those energies and those dopamine rushes in helpful and safe ways. What are some helpful ways? So going go-karting is one way to enjoy your dopamine rushes in a safe way. He talks about athletics on page 77 as a safe way to channel that energy and harness and develop integrative growth and gist thinking, reflective thinking, thoughtful thinking. Not my picture. And so that leads us to an important question out of the information you read on page 78 as we think about how should risky behavior be addressed. And he talks about, you know how the book starts off with the teen who killed his mentor? A teen was driving recklessly as his mentor was driving out of the driveway, and this young person smashed into their car, and Bill, his mentor, died. It was a teen who did that. So he goes back to that vignette of his motivation for writing this book and this resource for those of us who work with adolescents. And he reflects on it and he says, for example, how should risky behavior be addressed? Well, the parents of that of that teenager, they shouldn't have bought this young person a second sports car. He had smashed another sports car. You remember that story? Yeah, and this was now a second sports car, and now someone was dead, and so many lives were negatively impacted by this teenager's risky behavior that was not checked. So on page 81, he starts off by saying, don't buy speeding teens a sports car and reward that behavior. And he says, information and understanding the teenage brain. For those of us who work with teens or have teens of our own, we need to understand the adolescent brain and its functioning. We need to understand the role of neurotransmitters, starting from sexual maturation. We need to understand the role of culture, what's culturally accepted in cultures. We need to understand socialization. We need to understand how that interacts with brain development and function. And page 81, there's some really good information about that. This has nothing to do with what we are talking about. Those are my little people. Thank you. Matilda is learning piano, and Faro is about ready. He benefits a lot because Matilda is older, so a lot of what she knows, he knows. So he's in a really, really good position. Okay. Matilda is 8.5, and Mufaro is turning 7 Christmas Eve. Yeah, so he's almost 7. And he's already reading 4th grade books, so super, super excited about what could be for these little ones. Brain integration is what Siegel talks about on page 82. And then he says, experience shapes neural circuits. Building on this concept from chapter 2 about how in early childhood, the child's brain, as it is developing from back to front, there's a lot of connections that are being made in the child's brain. And so any circuits, the child has millions and millions of these connections. Many of them are not being used, but the experience the child is having, being held, being touched, adults responding when the child is unhappy, all of that is experienced, and certain connections are being made and fortified each time the mother holds the child and feeds the child and talks to the child. Certain connections are being strengthened. So he's talking about that experience shapes these circuits. The more you use a circuit, the stronger it gets. So teaching them math, teaching them science, potty training them, coming back to making a connection, not with Freud this time, but making a connection with Erikson. I need to see that you remember the theories. Erikson's 8 stages of development, building off of Freud. So as we think about potty training, right? If you want, you can make a connection with Piaget and brain development, the 4 stages of Piaget's brain development. Hey, I need to hear these buzzwords a lot. Okay. All of those are experiences that get stronger if they are used. And so there are two paths to brain integration. The first one is pruning. So any unused connections are lost. And so Siegel in this section expands on this concept of focused attention and helping young people focus on positive things and helping them to have positive experiences that will prune out what is unwanted, what is disliked, what's not appropriate, and they can focus on helpful things, important things, safe activities and experiences. Alienation, he talks about that. That is a process of how the axons of the neuron is coated by myelin. And that is what facilitates the further development of the brain and the faster movement of messages from one neuron to the next. What three things promoted healthy brain development in your adolescence? I want to give you a quick minute to jot down three things that led to your own brain development as we think about experiences you've had in your life. And some of the things we're talking about, we can think about, Katie, mistakes you learned from. What has helped you be the wonderful person you are today, to have survived to be the age you are? So think of three things that promoted healthy brain development for you when you were a younger teen. So you gotta jot that down, and then we'll share those out. I won't necessarily have you, you can do group work if you want. Some of you like group work. In your reflections, you enjoy group work. So yeah, why don't you talk to each other? I'm gonna sit down. So find a human to share the three things that led to your healthy brain development. And that's the last thing we're gonna do today. I'm gonna look for that racing video. It's like 1 minute long, but you do this while I look for the video.
So I feel like yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
Any exciting things come up from your conversation, from your exchanges?
I was in journalism club in high school, so I had like a lot of responsibility, especially when I was like an upperclassman. I had deadlines to meet and I was in charge of other people.
Okay, so leadership.
Yeah.
Okay. What else did you hear that was interesting?
We talked a lot about independence and having to like be your own best parent, I guess. Like how to grow up quickly.
Autonomy. So you probably had autonomy granting parents. So parenting, did anybody talk about parenting?
I did.
You did? What was said about parenting?
Like more like yeah.
So what kind of parenting style did your parents use? There's 4 parenting styles, remember them? Authoritative, authoritarian, permissive, and uninvolved. Very good. So what kind of parents did you have? What kind of style did they use predominantly? Authoritative, that's the one where there's a lot of autonomy granting and they don't use physical or verbal punishments. And they give you a lot of space to share your mind and those kind of things. Authoritative. Authoritarian are dictators who often use physical punishments to force them into submission, into doing the adult. The request for authoritarian. Then permissive, everything goes. And then uninvolved. Child is like a wildflower that is gonna survive out of, off of the rain and the sunshine. Uninvolved, just not there. Uninvolved. I suspect they use a lot of this. Someone once asked, can a parent use more than one? I'm sorry, the pen is lousy. Yeah. I use a different approach when in raising my kids. I'm mostly authoritative. I didn't start off like that. When my kids were younger, there was at least, well, not at least, I would say about 40% authoritarianism, where we gotta do this, bro. That's what we're doing. Stop arguing with me. That's what we're doing. But now it's a lot of autonomy granting and listening and negotiating. There are times where, dude, I have a class. I'm not ready for it. I need to work on my class. So I have no idea what you're doing right now. As long as they're not burning the house down and I can't smell smoke, have fun, break a leg. Not literally, but you understand what I'm saying? There are times where I'm not involved. When I'm in my class, they're on their own for an hour and 15 minutes. So. Okay, all right. You want to see a video before you go? I showed this video to talk about risky behaviors. You remember this video? How did it make you feel? Think about that.
It stressed me out.
Oh, it's
My friend is a really construction driver like this, and he likes to see that stuff, and I'm always sitting in the car, and I'm like, you can't even do it. Because I have my grandma. Which is like fine. A little, you know, car. That happens all the time on the freeway. Yeah. And they just swerve in between. I'm like, I could totally hit you.
exactly.
I could totally hit you.
And you can fall off that bike.
Well, and they go in between cars too. It makes me want to throw up because it's so anxious. Or when you get caught in a race. I don't know if that's ever.
Oh, and they do this.
Oh,
Yeah.
and they always swerve
Yeah.
in between you. You're just like trying to stay focused.
Like you're making me uneasy.
Oh my gosh, I can't do it. My boyfriend loves watching racing videos like this, and he watches a lot of.
But that's kilometers per hour.
Okay. Okay. Or like, have you seen the ones in Russia? They're so like.
Oh, Gresham? Yeah, why is it about Gresham? Because whenever I go to the falls.
Gresham, I live in Gresham. Gresham's chaotic. I said Russia. Like,
Oh,
I feel like
Russia.
A lot of Russian racing videos are.
Is it? I will look for that on YouTube later today.
Oh, in Gresham, you know, 26 street races, 26 all the time. So I work in downtown Gresham, and I feel like everyone just zooms on me, and I'm like, you'll see like little families like having, you know, their moment, and people trying to go to friends, literally going to IK next door, and then these like chaotic teenagers are like revving their engines and going, and I'm like, I'm literally trying to serve food to like customers, and you're loud engine. Not it. Just like go somewhere else. I don't care. Go to Corbett. Seriously. Go hang out with the Hicks. Like, seriously. Oh my gosh. I remember in high school, like the trucks would do that, but they would have people in the beds of their trucks, and they would be like 75, and these like dudes would just be like standing up. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? What if you roll? What if you roll and you're going 75 the speed of sitting in the back of your truck? You're bored, high boy.
Yeah, of course. Bad things happen. So anyway, I thought of this when yeah, it goes on for a few more minutes until they get to a toll, then they are forced to stop. So anyway, thank you. Please read, let me see. Please read pages 85 to 138. That's where our lesson will come from. Your reflection questions are over there. Thursday, I'm not able to be in class, but I will be live on Zoom on Thursday. I'm not here on Thursday, but I'll be live on Zoom. So please log in and we will do the second half of chapter 2. Okay, so please put that on your phone, operate from a location of your choice, and then, yeah, log in for the live Zoom class. Awesome. Have a wonderful day, you guys, and thanks for class today.